T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
All right. Well, it's an honor to be here tonight. My name is Kent Hovind. I live in Pensacola, Florida.
Jim Strayer. I'm from Michigan.
I'm Reinhold Schlieper. I teach here, and that means I live around this area too.
My name is Luther Reisbig. I'm a professor of aerospace engineering. I graduated from Michigan State University, where I got my PhD in engineering there. I'm probably the least qualified person to be here talking about any of these matters, but I'll apologize, and we'll do what we can. Thank you very much.
Professors, you'll have an additional 5 minutes to rebuttal Dr. Hovind's opening statement and to pose a question to him.
I am confused. Being philosophically consistent and being a very honest person, I'm sure you can tell me where God came from. And in addition, once you've told me where God comes from, please try to clarify how you can figure that a spiritual force can have an impact on a material universe to create it. I have a sense of sort of reversal experience here, but please do, go ahead.
You got 5 minutes. Now, I just want to know which question.
That's all right. You may take the rest of the minutes.
We're supposed to do one question at a time. Which one would you like? That was part of the format for the debate. So which question?
I want you to fill in the story of the rest of the beginning of the universe. God, spiritual matter, impact on material matter.
Okay. So 2 questions. All right.
Go ahead.
All right, your question, where did God come from, assumes that you're thinking of the wrong, obviously it displays that you're thinking of the wrong God, because the God of the Bible is not affected by time, space, or matter. If he's affected by time, space, or matter, he's not God. Time, space, and matter is what we call a continuum. All of them have to come into existence at the same instant, because if there were matter but no space, where would you put it? If there were matter and space but no time, when would you put it? You cannot have time, space, or matter independently. They have to come into existence simultaneously. The Bible answers that in 10 words. In the beginning, there's time. God created the heaven, there's space, and the earth, there's matter. So you have time, space, matter, created a trinity of trinities there. Just, you know, time is past, present, future. Space has length, width, height. Matter has solid, liquid, gas. You have a trinity of trinities created instantaneously, and the God who created them has to be outside of them. If he's limited by time, he's not God. The guy who created this computer is not in the computer. He's not running around in there changing the numbers on the screen, okay? The God who created this universe is outside of the universe. He's above it, beyond it, in it, through it. He's unaffected by it. So the concept that a spiritual force cannot have any effect on a material body, well then I guess you'd have to explain to me things like emotions and love and hatred and envy and jealousy and rationality. I mean, if your brain is just a random collection of chemicals that formed by chance over billions of years, how on earth can you trust your own reasoning processes and the thoughts that you think? Okay, so your question, where did God come from, is assuming a limited God, and that's your problem. The God that I worship is not limited by time, space, or matter. If I could fit the infinite God in my 3-pound brain, he would not be worth worshiping, that's for certain. So that's the God that I worship. Thank you.
Professors, you'll now have 12 minutes to present your opening arguments, and additional 5 minutes to rebuttal Dr. Hovind's position and state a question back to him. Thank you.
They want to say that you can have all kinds of animals evolved in 6,000 years just hopped off of a ship someplace that Noah's running. It's impossible. There is absolutely no way that that amount of DNA could change in 6,000 years. The only way you can solve that is by saying the usual way. It must have been a miracle. Well, in science, we don't talk about miracles. We talk about evidence. And that's what's important to us.
Thank you.
I do wonder about my earlier question. I don't feel comfortable about it being answered. That is, you keep insisting that the God of the Bible in some way is responsible for all this. You may, even if you were to prove that there's some kind of spiritual force, it is not necessarily the God of the Bible. So you're taking a giant leap there. So I think there's a lot of that has to do with lots of faith that has to be developed in there. And I see that from our group here. I don't think you can rely on faith. I think you need to, if you want to be honest, intellectually honest, you've got to come up with something a little bit more solid than just to buy in to the fact that 80% of U.S. Americans are God believers and only 14% are not. So I don't know. Is that, can he answer that? Or?
Absolutely.
All right, that'd be nice.
The evolutionist does not answer the question. There's 6 different types of evolution, as I shared clearly earlier. If the Big Bang Theory is true, then I would like to know what exploded and where did it come from and where did the energy come from and where did the space come from for the matter to expand into, and where did the organization come from and where did the information come from. There's a whole host of questions that are a whole lot harder for you to answer than in the beginning God. Where's information come from? This universe is not just random molecules circulating around. I mean, it carries information. Just like a book is so much more than ink on a paper, it carries information. And the DNA is more than just chemicals. It's information. So the evolutionist never answers the question, where did this information come from? Where did the energy come from? Where did the matter itself come from? And you gripe about my belief. I believe by faith in the beginning God. I know, I admit I don't understand that. But you believe hundreds of things by faith. You don't even understand that you're believing by faith. You think matter is either eternal or can create itself. What's the 2 choices? How did matter get here? The world is here. Where did the matter come from? Did it just happen by itself, or is it all just imaginary? We're not really here at all. You're faced with the option of, we're not really here, this is all just our imagination, or it had a beginning, or matter is eternal, which is both of the second 2 options are in violation of the obvious laws of thermodynamics. Matter doesn't create itself. And everything degrades over time, so either it had a beginning or it didn't. If it had a beginning, then what was before the beginning? I mean, there's so many thousands of things you take by faith. I say in the beginning God, and you say, well, this matter somehow either was always here or created itself, and then this matter somehow became alive, and then this first living thing learned how to reproduce, and then it learned how to make something other than its kind. I mean, even though nobody's ever seen that, nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. Or you mentioned about, the fact that a wolf and a fox and a dog coming from a common ancestor off Noah's Ark in only 4,400 years. For heaven's sake, you believe they came from a rock. I mean, come on. I don't think my theory is that silly at all. So, my answer to your question is still the same. I believe in the beginning God. I do take that by faith. Here's the major difference that I don't think you're going to understand. I admit mine is a religion. They do not admit theirs is a religion. They want you to think what they believe is science, and all of you should pay for their religion to be taught in this university. And that's the situation we have today, and that's unfortunate. There have always been situations where the majority taught something. I mean, in the Soviet Union 15 years ago, if you stood up and said, hey kids, I don't believe in communism, I think capitalism is a better system, you would be in Siberia if you survived. And here in Emory University, if you stood up in your classroom and said, I don't believe this evolution theory is true, I think it's pretty obvious there must have been a designer to this system, you would be in intellectual Siberia. You would lose your job. It has happened to hundreds of teachers, just simply for standing up and say, look, I think the evidence is here, folks. There must have been a designer. If I asked you to explain how computers came to be, but you cannot use man as your answer, I only want a purely naturalistic explanation for the origin of computers. Purely naturalistic. The answer has to lie within the computer. How did these molecules get together? How did this data get together? How did these plastic molecules come together and the different silicon chips? How did it happen? Your answer has to lie in the computer. I've already eliminated the only obvious answer to the problem at the beginning by my definition. They're trying to eliminate the only logical answer to the question by their definition of science. They want to define science as things that we can observe and test and demonstrate in the natural world. Okay, well then that eliminates both evolution and creation. Both are unobserved. We don't see anything change. We don't see anything created from nothing. Here's the problem. Both creation and evolution are religious. I admit mine's a religion. They don't admit theirs is a religion. And all of us are paying for their religion to be taught in the school system. And I, for one, resent that. So my answer is still the same. God did it. My question for them now?
Your question for them, quickly, please.
Okay, my question for them. I have several thousand questions I guess I'd like to ask. Does your textbook you're holding in front of you that you said you trust, here used at this university, does your textbook teach that there are vestigial structures? If you could maybe just look in the index under the word vestigial. Did I get 5 minutes? Or just ask a question?
Yeah, just a question. You already had your 5.
Okay. Does your textbook teach that the appendix is vestigial and is no longer needed, even though all doctors know the appendix is not vestigial? It has been proven to be part of the immune system. If your appendix is taken out, you can live, just like you can live without both your arms and both your eyes. It doesn't prove you don't need it. So just a simple question. Does your textbook teach the kids that there are vestigial structures, and that is therefore evidence for evolution? I think you have that on one of your posters here, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it does teach that there's vestigial structures.
Professors, between the three,
It doesn't teach that there's a God, though.
you have 5 minutes.
I don't get the point. I also know where the computer came from, from science. It was put together by people that understood physics and chemistry. It was put together by people that understood molecules and atoms. It was put together by people with intelligence, people that knew how to love and hate and carry on biological relationships because they have intelligence. We got intelligence because we have brains. We've got brains because we've got DNA. It doesn't make any sense at all to say that people that don't have religion don't have feelings, don't follow the law. The Constitution of our country does not mention God or religion. We are a nation of laws. We're a nation of laws because we're a nation of people that have intelligence. That's the way it is. That's the way animals operate. Some animals evolved a different way. They evolved so they could fly, or they could crawl, or they could run. And what was successful for them worked out for them. What's successful for us is that we have a good brain. And we'll have to wait and see what happens. Not in our lifetimes, but all animals are in the same boat. All plants are in the same boat. Sometimes when people were doing this kind of stuff, people are always thinking about human beings. You can find the evolutionary theory in any part of life. It doesn't matter if you're talking about maple trees. I still want an answer to the question of how did all these different things evolve in just 6,000 years when it isn't possible. It's mathematically not possible. If it were, by now farmers would have bred a different species. When he says something like, well, you breed dogs, you always get dogs. Well, of course you do, because you can't change them in 6,000 years. If you could, farmers would have bred something different. We've been breeding plants and animals for 4,000 years. We can't do it simply because it takes too long. The Earth is old enough for evolution to have taken place, but we haven't had enough time to get different kinds of animals starting from Noah's Ark. Reinhold, you want to say something?
We have a minute again?
Yeah, we got a minute and a half, I guess.
Oh, my God. I do. One thing that sort of crossed my mind as you were speaking is the difference between science and religion. It seems to me there is a very clear-cut difference. Science is self-correcting in the sense that the battle of disagreement will edit out that which is wrong, and by essentially falsifiability. That is, in other words, if a scientist advances a particular idea, he also can tell what particular conditions must be the case for him to retract that idea. And this is something that is absent in religion. That is, religion is seeking truth, absolute truth, and charges science with not finding truth, which it isn't trying. Science works with probability and with self-correction. Religion, ultimately, I know I am right, and I'm not allowing anything else. This is what is so devastating to try to talk to anybody who is a person of faith. You can't get anywhere. because they'll weasel out just about anything you try to offer by inventing new and different interpretations and new passages of the Bible and whatnot. And everybody else, of course, is wrong, except the one person who's looking at it. That kind of system, I think, cannot be possibly science.
Well, he said science is self-correcting. I agree. I happen to like science quite a bit. But see, the creation view doesn't have to be constantly corrected because it's right. Okay? And I like the answer that the one gentleman gave. He said, obviously, the computer is here because of man, because of intelligence. I mean, obviously, this took a designer. Well, duh. So did the universe. So did the single cell in your body. So did every living creature. I mean, you can't explain the computer inside the computer, can you? And you can't explain the creation inside the creation. There has to be something above an intelligent designer. And you talk about devastating to talk to a person of faith. What you said a few sentences earlier was, or what the other gentleman said was, of course we don't see changes. Farmers have been raising dogs for, 4,000 years, and we don't see changes because it takes too long. If you don't see faith in there, I can't help you, okay? You are relying on the unseen. Oh yes, long ago and far away. Evolution has got to be the biggest fairy tale for adults ever created. Everything you said required faith. Well, we see dogs produce dogs, but if you give them billions of years, well, okay. You just left science and went to religion and didn't even see it. You didn't even see what happened in your mind. And one of you teaches a course on logic. I mean, if this was a student of yours doing this, you'd give them an F. And yet your fellow professors believe it and you think it's great. They jump from faith to science back and forth all the time. Well, we see dogs produce dogs, but if we had enough time, stop. You're leaving science right that moment. So, if I got 3 minutes, let me just cover a couple things that I resent being in the textbooks, and I would like to hear if this is in your textbook. My question is this in your textbook? And after I share with you the evidence, I want to know why, okay? This textbook says many organisms retain traces of their evolutionary history. For example, the whale retains pelvic and leg bones as useless vestiges. Earlier, it was mentioned one of the evidences for evolution is vestigial organs. Andrew Carnegie left behind millions of dollars to start an organization called the National Center for Science Education, of which you are a part, okay? The National Center for Science Education. I was in Berkeley last week. 147 professors at Berkeley refused to debate me. Jeannie Scott won't debate me for any amount of money on the planet. Here's Jeannie Scott right here. I'll fly out at my expense and take them all on. This is welcome to the home page of National Center for Science Education. A tax-exempt non-profit membership organization working to defend the teaching of evolution against sectarian attack. We are a nationally recognized clearinghouse for information and advice to keep evolution in the classroom and scientific creationism out. The National Center for Science Education is a little bitty storefront building in Berkeley, California. I was there 4 days ago, and they got 5 people working in this little building. And they teach that maybe the cow evolved into the whale. That's what their literature teaches. This textbook says the whale has a pelvis and a leg bone. Whales have hind limb bones that have no function. Just imagine whales walking around. It's true. These are the bones they're talking about right there. Just imagine the whale walking around. I'm sorry, I tried and I can't, okay? They say the whale's pelvis has no apparent function. The whale's pelvis is evidence of its evolution from 4-legged land-dwelling mammals. This is simply a lie, okay? Those little bones are anchor points that special muscles attach to that allow the whales to reproduce. This has nothing to do with whales walking on land. It has to do with making baby whales. So either the authors of this textbook are ignorant about whale anatomy and certainly shouldn't be talking about it, or they're deliberately lying to you and desperate for evidence for their theory. So my question is very simple. Does your textbook teach the whale has a vestigial pelvis? If so, why would you use a biology book in your biology class at a famous university like this based on an author that doesn't even understand his basic anatomy of whales, and he's either lying to the students or he's ignorant? Why would you use something like that? And how could a vestigial structure be evidence for evolution when that's an example of losing, not gaining? It doesn't tell you how the whale got the legs. Oh, it's slowly losing them. Well, in the first place, it's not slowly losing them, okay? It's a lie. Secondly, even if it was, that's the opposite of evolution. How on earth can this be evidence for a theory? Yes, boys and girls, we're slowly losing things. That's how we got it all. Well, duh. So, my question is simple. Does your book teach there are vestigial structures, specifically the whale having a vestigial pelvis? If it does, why would you use a book like that in a university like this?
Excuse me, sir, it's just a quick reminder. I'll turn your mic on in just a second. We're going to go to an intermission in one more iteration. So, yes, absolutely. Your table, and we're going to go to intermission after that.
The book does not teach that the whale has a vestigial pelvis. That's one of the most ignorant statements I'd ever heard. The pelvis is an absolute necessary thing for the whale. When he attaches all of his muscles to it, it's one of the major things that helps him swim. I happen to be keeping up with what's going on with the evolution of the whale, and we have a very good set of bones saved from fossil records showing that the whales evolved through a long period of time from animals that were on land to animals that are in the water. We have that evidence. And to say we don't have it or to say that we're lying is disingenuous to this audience. I ask you, don't believe me. Let me get off the subject a second. Right up there are the things we try to do in science. We say, let's not believe revelation. If somebody just says, I know because I know. No, that's not good enough. Believe authority. No, let's not believe authority. Let's not believe any of us up here at the table. You folks can get the copy of this book or this thing here and get the facts. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe him. You can find out for yourself. You don't have to trust authorities, even me. The second thing is tradition. You don't have to trust tradition. I mean, come on, there's different traditions all over the world. But we can trust science because science should be the same all over the world. What I'm trying to say to you is when I teach my classes, evidence is what's important. I have no evidence that God exists. I have no evidence that there was a Noah's Ark. I have no evidence that there was an Adam and Eve. I have evidence that whales evolved from animals that live on land, and I can prove it.
Well, we do have, I haven't had anything to say. There's a lot of talking going on, and that's unusual for me. But the one thing that we can prove by the great philosophical statement, cogito ergo sum in Latin, which says, I think, therefore I am. Now what that says is that I exist and prove that I am there because I can think, but it doesn't necessarily say that you exist. I can't prove that you exist, but I can prove that I exist. And I also know that I'm here. And I do believe in you. There's a high probability that I do believe in you, and you are here. And somehow you got here. And somehow this happened probably in the last time between 10 and 20 billion years ago, probably to the record of the Earth, which was maybe 4 to 6 billion years ago. And basically all of this biological stuff is very interesting, and it does prove to how science brings about to cause things to happen, but it's so complicated and it's so complicated that you can confuse the process by misinterpreting the results. We do have, as my colleagues say, the scientific method, and it based on the best information that we can put together to form to what we know is true. It doesn't mean that we know the truth. It means we have maybe some probability of the truth, and that may be the best that we will always have. But to start talking about chickens and dinosaurs, and I like eating chickens because chickens are descendants of dinosaurs, and every time I eat a chicken, it makes me happy. Because I think a lot of them ate our ancestors a long time before that, about 160 million years ago. So,
okay. Let me cover 5 main points here. He said we have evidence of whales evolving from land animals. In the first place, this is absolutely incorrect, okay? If he's talking about ambulocetus, you need to study here. This was made mostly of imagination. If that's your evidence, you need to study the ambulocetus a little better, okay? There is overwhelming evidence that ambulocetus is just an unusual animal, or just an animal that may be still existing someplace. There were just a few bones found and a whole lot of plaster of Paris and imagination used to put it together. Basilosaurus is not an intermediate. The serpentine form of the body and peculiar serrated cheek teeth made it plain that these animals could not possibly have been ancestral to any modern whales. This is from one of the experts on invertebrate history here. The evolutionary origin of whales remains controversial among zoologists, Compton's Encyclopedia a couple years ago. Pakicetus, pictured here, is made from one small piece of a skull, a few pieces of jaw, a small piece of jaw, and a few teeth. You find a piece of the skull, a few teeth, and a piece of the jaw, and that's proof it's intermediate between a whale and a cow? You have got to be kidding. I'm sure this is one of the ones in his fossil proof for evolution, and you're missing such a major point. I don't know if I can help if you can't get this, but no fossils count as evidence for evolution. In a court of law, they would laugh at you because you bring some bones in and say, Your Honor, this is the ancestor of whales. Well, first place, there's not enough to tell what it is. Secondly, you don't know that that is the ancestor of anybody. You don't know that that animal had any kids that lived. It is absolutely impossible to use any fossils at all as evidence for evolution. And anybody that's telling you fossils are evidence for evolution, you talk about voodoo science, that is it, folks, okay? We know these bones produce something other than their kind. Even though no animal today can do this, these bones were able to do it. That's absolute voodoo science. That's a good word. I got to use that one from now on. I appreciate that, okay? And if we could rewind the tape, we would hear you said many times, well, probably it happened. We're here, so that proves we're here, so that proves evolution. Man, you talk about voodoo science and absolute insanity and logic. We're here, I agree. That doesn't offer any support for the evolution theory. Yes, I agree we're here. I happen to like being here, okay? The Bible teaches clearly that the birds were made on the 5th day, and the reptiles were made on the 6th day, okay? Evolution teaches exactly the opposite. Reptiles first and then birds. The Bible says birds first, then reptiles. Actually, everything about the evolution theory is backwards to what the Bible teaches. Somebody's clearly wrong on this. This guy says dinosaurs are alive as birds, scientist says, okay? Well, this is absurd, obviously. Nobody's ever seen any animal produce a different kind of animal. They can believe that if they want. Here's a USA Today. Missing link discovered, October 1999. National Geographic, one that he trusts. Missing link, breaking news, folks. We have found National Geographic, November 1999, the missing link. A few months later, oops, it was a mistake. Some Chinese guy had taken a couple of fossils and glued them together and fooled everybody. National Geographic paid, I think, $80,000 for that fossil. It was incredible, the amount of money they paid for that. And there's all kinds of it. I could show you over and over where National Geographic is not trustworthy. The entire argument that I heard a few minutes ago was majority opinion supports evolution. Okay, first place, I don't think that's true. Okay, how many of you in here tonight at a secular university do not believe the evolution theory that they present? Okay, how many do believe the evolution theory that they present? Okay, we could take a count here. I suspect that was majority for the creation side. We can count if you like, but I know this. About 9% of the population in Gallup polls and surveys taken says they believe in atheistic evolution, no God is involved. 90% say yes, there was a God involved, and 50% of the entire population says God did it in the last 10,000 years. So if you're using majority opinion as your argument, I think that's obviously, historically, you can prove that's pretty easy to prove wrong. Majority opinion proves nothing. Majority's often been wrong. So all of the experts on birds are saying the dinosaurs could not possibly have turned to birds. There are just millions and millions of differences. So I guess I'd be curious, with all the evidence that we've gathered over the years, why you would think a dinosaur turned into a bird. And then you said something I think the average audience may miss if you're not careful here. He said, well, it's so complicated. And the implication that I get, because I get this all the time, I've done many debates at universities, and I've never had a class in debate. I don't understand how the rules are, and I don't know all about all this timekeeping stuff. All I know is I think the evidence is overwhelmingly obvious. There must have been a designer, okay? And I'm here to defend the biblical view of creation as the only logical scientific choice. And I'm here to tell people I resent everybody's tax dollars going to pay for this voodoo science of evolution to be taught in this university and other universities around the world. Beer is often sold at football games, but beer has absolutely nothing to do with football, okay? Beer does not become athletic by association. And just because evolution is mixed into a science book, that does not make evolution part of science. It's just mixed in the book, and I'm sorry about that. Okay, I'm trying to fix it. But he said it's so complicated, we don't want to confuse the people, or something to that effect. I don't remember the exact quote here. To me, what that's trying to imply is they're smart, you're too dumb to understand, and anybody that doesn't believe in evolution is simply dumb. And if you just would study this for 100 hours like I have, then you'd believe like I do. And since you don't believe like I do, you haven't studied enough, and you're dumb. That's the implication I'm getting. Is anybody else getting that from this tonight? Okay. Now, we do exist. We are here. I agree. And that is your evidence for evolution? You got to be kidding. All of the evidence of evolution from whales, first place, no fossils count. None. Think about it. No fossils can possibly count for evidence. And the fossils they find are little fragments here and there, and they are putting their imagination and interpretation on those fossils. Look, when you find a bunch of... There is no such thing as a fossil record. How they teach that blows my mind. They say, well, in the fossil record... I say, well, what fossil record? There is no fossil record. There are a bunch of bones in the dirt. There's a bunch of bones in the dirt. I agree. I happen to have a huge fossil collection myself. But those bones don't have dates on them. They don't come with a little tag saying this one evolved into this one. All you do is put your preconceived evolutionary imagination idea on top of these fossils that are found. See, the creationists and the evolutionists are both looking at the same evidence. We both see the fossils. I see that as an example of death. They see that as an example of, wow, that's how we got ahead. All these animals died. Isn't that wonderful? No, that's proof there was a big flood, because fossils just don't normally form except under special conditions, and billions of fossils are found. To me, that's evidence of the Bible. I see it that way. Thank you.
The first question will be posed to the evolutionist side. The question is the Big Bang Theory a reasonable scientific theory? Please explain. You'll have 7 minutes. Mr. Hovind will have 3 minutes to rebuttal, and then we will go on to completely independent question. Is the Big Bang Theory a reasonable scientific theory? Please explain. Thank you.
Is that to us? So that's they're asking us? Yeah, I'll answer it. Go for it. Yes, I will answer the issue for the team. Yes, the Big Bang Theory is viable, but it's one of two theories about the existence of the universe. One of which was a constant energy universe. It said that basically simply exists, and energy is somehow generated within itself inside. There is no scientific evidence to show that that particular theory of the universe has ever been proven or shown any evidence to show. The Big Bang Theory does have a piece of evidence that Wilson and Conzio from Bell Labs got a Nobel Prize for discovering the fact that there was radiation throughout the entire universe that is in all particular directions, believed to be the remnants of the explosion of the energy in the birth of the universe. And their antennas would basically, they could point, no matter how they pointed the antennas in any direction, they discovered that the intensity of radiation in that particular direction was the same, which was essentially a proof of a piece of data that showed that there may have been something that made the Big Bang Theory. So that we have that. The scientific evidence right now is that the Big Bang Theory is the best knowledge that we have. It is believed. There are some very strange things about it. It starts essentially with there was a void. Now the void is, it wasn't a hole or a box with nothing in it. It basically didn't even have space. There was nothing. And somehow a black hole the size of an atom became unstable and exploded. And it filled essentially into an area the size of an atom, 10 to the 6 more mass than we currently have in the existing universe. I find having something that packed together and how close we are here, and if we believe in the conservation of mass principles and things of this nature, all things have to be conserved. And the conservation has to exist either in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. And as such, we are here and know today the information and the knowledge had to have existed at the beginning of the creation of the universe. Now you can place anything that you wish about how this happened or who happened or how it happened or where it come from. I don't know how a God could come outside of our universe, because there's nothing outside of our universe. It's a void. There's nothing. You can't go outside of our universe. But we do know that the 10 to the billion years ago, that from the beginning of 10 billion years ago, we have the universe essentially to its time to date, the cooling of energy and the formation of stars and the formation of materials and eventually forming planets. And 4 to 6 billion years ago, we had a crust around this particular planet, and eventually some chemicals got together, and we had life. And the rest is here, and we're here. And I believe that, and I believe that it's so. And all of the absolute details, and there are many details, are probably less important to me than the fact that it did begin and it does exist and that we're here today. I'm not fighting with religion. I'm a Christian. I have no conflict with Christian beliefs, my Christian beliefs, and with the scientific methods that I also believe in as well. So, I don't see anything that's contradictory to this.
Luther, you're more... Am I on? Okay. You're more of an expert at this than I am, so I was just going to ask you to elaborate a little bit of the possibility of getting some corroborative evidence of something like the Big Bang through the view of the Hubble back into time. Is that something that might provide corroborative evidence for that?
Yes. The scientific record is accumulating substantially about our measurements and essentially what is going on in the universe, and essentially what we know about the mechanism of this. We're dealing with astronomical sizes and huge places. And if it started with a little place the size of an atom, we do know that it has done. I can tell you one thing that we can all say that is true. Time has always gone forward, and time goes forward with entropy into diversity, and diversity generates through time. It creates everything that's possible. And what we have today possible is what we have and what we are observing.
Dr. Hovind, you will now have 3 minutes to rebuttal that statement, and then I will ask you a completely independent question. Thank you.
Okay. Humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created based on the Big Bang theory. Textbooks say 18 or 20 billion years ago, there was all the matter in the universe, which would be a lot of stuff. And by the way, the word universe means a single spoken sentence. Universe, single spoken sentence. God said. When he said nothing can exist outside the universe, this is about like two computers talking to each other. Does man exist? Nothing exists outside the computer. We're it. Duh. Okay. All the matter in the universe was concentrated in one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. I think that's what we just heard a moment ago, okay? This textbook says, after many billions of years, all the matter and energy will once again be packed into a small area. This area will be no larger than the period at the end of this sentence. Then another Big Bang will occur. It happens every 80 to 100 billion years. Save the planet. We're going to get squished, folks, okay? This guy said, nothing really means nothing. That's brilliant, okay? Not only matter and energy would disappear, but also space and time. However, physicists theorize that from the state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion. I believe that's what I just heard in the last few minutes, okay? This whole Big Bang idea started with a guy named George Latimer, who said the thing that exploded was a few light years in diameter. Well, at the least, that's about 12 trillion miles, okay? Then by 1965, they said, well, it was only 275 million miles. 1972, I think it was Scientific American, said, no, the thing that exploded, the Big Bang, came from something only 71 million miles in diameter. Later they said, oh, no, it's only 54,000 miles. 1983, they said the thing that exploded was a trillionth the diameter of a proton. Now, that's tiny, okay? And now they're saying nothing exploded. Here's Discover Magazine 2 years ago. Where did everything come from? The universe burst into something from absolutely nothing. Zero. Nada. As it got bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere. How is that possible? Ask Alan Guth. His theory will explain everything. Well, what does Alan Guth say? In Scientific American, Alan Guth says the observable universe could have evolved from an infinitesimal region. That's a dot. He said it's then tempting to go one step further and speculate that the entire universe evolved from literally nothing. Folks, why would a sentence like this be found in Scientific American? There's nothing scientific about that statement. It exhibits incredible faith. But the textbooks teach this dot was spinning. It spun faster and faster. Finally, it exploded. The Big Bang. There are so many problems with the Big Bang. Simple physical science problems. What exploded? Where did the matter come from? Where did the energy come from? Where did the organization come from? Where did the information come from? The story he gave was so good, I got to replay the tape and hear this, 4.6 billion years ago, the planet developed a rocky crust. The chemicals got together, blah, blah, blah. Here we are. Exactly what I said earlier. That's what the theory teaches. Now, if he wants to believe that, that's fine. I don't care what you believe. But don't call that science. And don't make me pay to teach that to the rest of these kids in this university. These kids came here to learn some science, not a fairy tale like that. Thank you.
Dr. Hovind, the next question will be posed to you. You'll have 7 minutes, and then the evolutionists will have 3 minutes. The question's more of an open-end one. Please prove, disprove, or generally talk about carbon dating and how it relates to evolution.
Get my projector on here. See, I have about 7,000 slides in PowerPoint, so it helps if you ask the questions in the same order that I have the answers. Carbon dating? Okay. I won't have time to cover all of the evidences I have, but I'll just give you a few examples of how it simply doesn't work. Because one good experiment is worth a pound of theory any day. Back in 1949, when they developed it, the lower leg of a mammoth dated 15,000 years old, but the skin dated 21,000 years old. Same animal. It's not working in 1949. 1963, living mollusk shells dated 2,300 years old. It's still not working, folks. 1970, at the proceedings of the 12th Nobel Symposium, they said if a carbon date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it does not entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. If it's completely out of date, we just drop it. Freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old. One part of a mammoth is 40,000 years old, another part's 26,000 from the same animal. We could talk all day about carbon dating, but here's living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old, 1984, Science Magazine. I don't have time to cover them all, but watch my video number 7, which is why it's out there. 1992. 2 Colorado Creek mammoths in Alaska found side by side. One dated 22,000 years old, the other one was 16,000 years old. They're side by side. 1996 at Berkeley University, they used the most advanced dating techniques they have. They discovered these things that they thought were 250,000 years old actually were 53,000 to 27,000. Well, I'd like to point out, Your Honor, that is still a 96% error. If you think carbon dating proves the age of anything, you need your head examined. Thank you.
I'd like a show of hands of how many understood that.
Let me just read the question to you verbatim, and then please talk on this topic. The question says, in evolution, there appears to be no real purpose to life. What hope do you have to offer me to even bother to continue to live? So I guess...
No, what did he say?
For the sake of open-endedness, please, I guess we're talking about morality, purpose, anything along those lines.
Well, let me point out one thing, that this is you know, sort of confusing terms. There may not be a purpose ostensibly defined for the universe as a whole or for society as a whole even. But that doesn't mean that an individual could not set up a purpose for him or herself. I'm going to live first, then I decide what's worthwhile for me to strive for in my life. If I simply subject myself to the mass and say, because they don't have a purpose, I'm going to kill myself, there's something demented. I think I need counseling at that point for all practical purposes here. So here again, I think a purpose is something that we create individually for ourselves. It's not something that we deduce from the nature of the universe in any way. I'm sure that everyone here has some kind of a purpose in their existence, defined by themselves, defined where they're going to go. So that would be my take on that. And did you want to?
Sure. If you were to take a little chunk of skin right there from me and look at that hair follicle, then you were to take a bird and take his wing and take that little follicle out right there, that's a feather follicle. Of course, if you took it from his leg, it would be a scale follicle. If you took a little chunk from a fish, you'd get another scale follicle. So there's scale follicles, feather follicles, and hair follicles. When we look at the DNA in those follicles, they're almost exactly alike. And then when we look at the DNA that produces the proteins that makes hair, scales, and feathers, it's almost exactly like. We can show relationships. That's important. Evolution wouldn't mean anything if we couldn't show relationships. If we found that a dog was more genetically related to a frog than it is to a cat, we'd know something's wrong. But we never find that. We know we've got so much information genetically that we may never figure it all out. We spent a lot of time here talking about fossils. Fossils don't mean anything as far as evolution is concerned. We don't need them. We got all the evidence we need to prove evolution without fossils. Forget fossils. They just aren't important. What's important is DNA.
Please.
All right. The question was, what's the purpose of life? Okay. Joseph Stalin executed 14,700 Polish officers, prisoners of war, at the Katyn forest. Why did he do that? How would he execute prisoners of war? Adolf Hitler executed at least 6 million Jews, plus millions of others. Why would a person kill Jews? Well, Hitler thought they were an inferior species that hadn't evolved as far. He was actually trying to speed up the evolution process. 1975 to 79, the Khmer Rouge, under the leadership of Pol Pot, executed more than 1/3 of their entire population. Check out the killing fields. Why did they do that? Why were the Australian Aborigines treated like they were animals? Why were Australian Aboriginal skulls dug up out of graves, or people were executed and their skulls were boiled down and they're sold to museums in America to have displays for evolution because they have a bigger jaw than other humans do? Kip Kinkle said, if there was a God, he wouldn't let me feel the way I do. There is no God, only hate. Huh. Well, on May 21st, 1998, 15-year-old Kip Kinkle, a student at Thurston High School in Oregon, entered the cafeteria, fired more than 50 rounds from a semi-automatic rifle. 26 students were injured, 2 were killed. Later, the bodies of his parents were found in his home. He was arrested, taken to a police headquarters where he attempted to murder a detective. He said, if there was a God, he wouldn't let me feel the way I do. There's no God, only hate. Why have violent crimes increased nearly 1,000% since I was a boy? And that's the time evolution became a popular theory in our textbook. Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris made a video prior to the Columbine shootings. They're talking about a football player. They said he doesn't deserve the jaw evolution gave him. Look for his jaw. It won't be on his body. Klebold's father was a geologist who believed in evolution. Both Eric and Dylan were followers of Nazi teachings. The shooting took place on Hitler's birthday on purpose. It was planned to commemorate Hitler. Eric's t-shirt said natural selection. They killed Cassie and Rachel just because they were Christians. They killed Isaiah just because he was black. Hitler hated black people. After all, they hadn't evolved as far. That was Hitler's thinking. The clothes may give a clue to the thinking of these teenagers. It said natural selection. Yes. What about this natural selection? Well, natural selection selects. It doesn't create a thing. It selects. That's all it can do. It's not a creation process. We go into that some other time. So my answer to the question is there a purpose to life? Absolutely, there certainly is. God created this universe with a plan. He created man with a purpose. Now, I have found in my speaking on this topic about 800 times a year all over the world and 15 years worth now, the reason people accept the evolution theory is not because they have a scientific reason. I asked a kid 2 weeks ago, I was debating two professors, or I forget where I was, it doesn't matter, 3 weeks ago. One kid came afterwards and said, evolution's a fact. I said, well, son, calm down, let me ask you a question. If creation was true, if the creation story is true, would that affect your lifestyle any? If there was a creator that said, thou shalt not commit adultery, no pornography, no lying, no cheating, no stealing, would that affect your lifestyle any? He said, you're trying to embarrass me, aren't you? I said, I don't even know who you are. I'm just asking you a question. The reason people accept evolution is because of their sin, not their science.
Dr. Hovind, this question is going to you first. You've mentioned the second law of thermodynamics to prove that God must have provided the initial energy or the initial something in the universe. Have you considered that some of the laws of nature only work in certain situations? For example, Newtonian physics breaks down towards the speed of light. So does the second law of thermodynamics really prove that God created the universe?
There are several ways to define the second law of thermodynamics. There's all kinds, let me try to get, well, it'll take me a minute, but basically they all boil down to the same thing. Matter, everything tends toward disorder, okay? Things don't order. That doesn't prove God created the universe, and it certainly doesn't prove the biblical view, okay? And it doesn't prove everybody ought to become an independent, temperamental, fundamental, right-wing, radical, chicken-eating Baptist like me. However, if you keep studying, you will get there, okay? I think the second law of thermodynamics demonstrates there must have been a beginning. Since everything is winding down, everything is falling apart, there had to be a beginning. There had to be something that wound it up. So yes, I think the second law of thermodynamics is proof positive that there was a beginning. Even the evolutionist will admit that. Oh yeah, 20 billion years ago. Well, what was before that? Was there any time or space before there was matter? And where did this matter come from? They have a totally illogical theory. Yes, I think that it's logical to say in the beginning God instead of in the beginning, nothing, or in the beginning dirt, or in the beginning matter, They worship matter like the Christian worships God. There's no difference. They're both religious. I think ours is more logical and scientifically defensible, but they're both ultimately, in the final analysis, are simply religious theories. We see things get old, they die, they fall apart, and if their philosophy of life is you're only here to pass on your genes, that's the only reason you exist, eat, drink, and be merry, tomorrow we die, that's a pretty pessimistic worldview. I think there's a much better view than that. You were created in God's image with a purpose. It's true everything's falling apart. The heavens wax old. I'm getting old. Everything's falling apart. My car's falling apart. Everything falls apart. How did it get wound up? Where did the initial organization, energy, and intelligence come from? Information is consistently being lost. Every time your DNA replicates, the little pieces break off, and it's like split ends on a hair, and eventually you can only replicate it so many times, and it quits replicating, and you die. If we are a copy off of a copy, 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 off of a copy of Adam, it's amazing we can even stand here and talk about it, okay? The information must have been incredible in the original because it's been degrading ever since. That's the second law of thermodynamics. Everything is degrading. This building is degrading. If you don't have people constantly maintain this building, it will fall apart. The entire highway system in America will fall completely apart if we don't keep maintaining it. Every building on this planet will fall down into a pile of rubble if somebody doesn't keep fixing it. And even then, if they try desperately to keep fixing it, at some point it's still going to fall down. It's inevitable. That's the second law. So if you think that evolution can overcome that second law, I would like to understand how, okay? The second law tells us everything's falling apart, therefore, obviously, there must have been a beginning. I can answer that in 10 words. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. That's a logical answer for me. You can have the rest of my time. All right.
Are we supposed to rebut this?
Can you do that?
I'll try. That's a mouthful, to say the least. First of all, the laws of thermodynamics are commonly called the laws of thermodynamics. People like to talk about the second law. Albert Einstein has said that the laws of thermodynamics are the only laws that will stand and never be overthrown forever. Stephen Hawking, a person who is believed to be one of the brightest men on the planet, has used the second law of thermodynamics to show the mechanism by which black holes have worked, which, you know, I think that's rather amazing. The opponent is saying truly diversity is a measure of the second law of thermodynamics, but let's don't badmouth it too muchly, because as the universe as it exists, as we know it, it's the only one that can exist for us to exist to follow these particular principles. So therefore, you know, I'm very reluctant to say this is something that we want to have to ask God to overthrow that. It seems to be the very thing that will make it possible for things to exist. Energy and how it got together, I don't know. But the fact that it is in a concentrated form that can go to a less deformed kind of, less concentrated form, and we can utilize when things go from hot places to cold places, and we did that when we drove our automobiles here today. You did this, you're driving around with an automobile that's 8,000 degrees Fahrenheit inside of that engine with the burning of gasoline. But you know, you don't have to have that inside of the car. Of course, you're surrounded by the 40 degrees or 50 degrees temperatures that you're driving through the atmosphere. The laws of thermodynamics are much misunderstood. I can look out across the class or the students here, and many of them are my students, and I can probably confess to the confusion that exists in thermodynamics. I probably contribute a great contribution to adding to that confusion, but what we have heard today are, and I've got to. I like to use colorful language, so I'm very careful, and I'm told I can't do that here, but I'm going to have to leave it with this, that I'm certainly glad I don't have to step in something.
Thank you. This question will be posed to your table. Evolutionary theory predicts that mankind will continue to evolve. How long, in your estimation, will it take for a distinct new species of humans to emerge? In other words, how long will it take for there to be 2 or more incompatible species of humans? And let me add something to that. Where do you foresee this going, the evolution of humans?
I can tell you one thing, we'll never have a war because there's been a disagreement on science. What we will have is people advancing because we've learned how to live with each other. If we don't do that, we're not going to advance at all. We have certain things that are going to take place with every species. If we go back and look how species have evolved over time, we can see that almost everything that's ever lived on this planet is extinct. Evolution is a really inefficient situation. Well, as a matter of fact, the intelligent designer is about as inefficient as you can get. Do you know how many kids die every year because they choke to death because our throat and our windpipe are so close together? I mean, whoever designed that? A first-year engineering student could do better than that. Just think how many people in this audience probably got all kinds of hang-ups because we've got a system that gets rid of our waste material right into a system that we reproduce with. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of animals that got better reproductive systems than that. They don't, you know, that the intelligent designer designed a snail that has his anus right above his mouth? Come on, who did that? We can explain those things by looking at evolution. You can't explain those things by looking at a designer. The designer did a terrible job on the eye. People have eye problems because the nerves in the cornea and the nerves in the retina are in the wrong place. And it happened that way because that was the only thing evolution had to work with. There's all kinds of problems with design in the world. There's all kinds of problems with evolution. And what happens is we try to correct them. Now, what's going to happen to us in the future? It'll depend on us. I mean, I like the question because what it involves is ecology, it involves environment, it involves saving the planet, it involves, you know, what it involves is understanding evolution.
So we're sharing this world already with quite a few different species that are awfully close to us. Let me also mention the dolphin. There are stories that go back all the way to Roman times of cooperation between human and dolphin. So if we're talking about intelligent siblings, I suppose, on this planet, there may be plenty already. We don't have to wait for that to develop. Beyond that, I don't know what the future will bring. And I think that is what characterizes scientific mentality, is that you are willing to live with uncertainty, yet don't know it all. That's why you're motivated to learn more. And I quite agree with that, with all the answers in one book. That's very authoritarian, undemocratic kind of thinking. One of the most frequent, since our colleague here mentioned Adolf Hitler, one of the most frequent words in Adolf Hitler's mouth was God and divine providence. Therein lies danger. It's an authoritarian kind of thinking that is not healthy.
All right, that's interesting. I don't want to step in much of that either myself. How long will it take for us to evolve into a new species? Nothing ever evolves into any new species. Well, I had to use the word species. So nothing ever evolves into a new kind. Nobody's ever observed anything change to a different kind. Bacteria are still bacteria. If they become resistant to a drug, it's because they lost the locking mechanism on the ribosome, so the antibiotic can't lock on. It's no different than somebody handcuffing everybody, hauling them off to jail to kill them, but you don't have any arms. So they can't handcuff you, so you survive. Wow, beneficial mutation. Well, it might be for the moment, but it's not any new information. Bacteria don't evolve into something else. They lose information. They're resistant to a particular drug for a short time, but then you put them back in the population of regular bacteria, and they're inferior. The bacteria are still bacteria, for heaven's sake. That's not an example of evolution. Okay, we're going to evolve how to get along. People choke because of poor design. How many of you happen to like the design of your esophagus and your trachea? I use mine. I've been using it for years. Okay, it works fine. Okay. The purpose of life is to save the planet and to understand evolution. Let's get more government funding so we can teach more of this stuff. So more kids can not only step in it, but wallow in it here. He said the eye is a poor design. Well, now let's see about that. Charles Darwin said, to suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd. Okay? And yet he goes on for 4 pages after that and tells how he thinks it happened. The retina of your eye is about 1 square inch. It has 137 million light-sensitive cells wired to the brain. I've done a huge amount of electrical wiring in my lifetime. I cannot imagine hooking up 137 million connections in 1 square inch. My Heavenly Father did it, and it works pretty good. It worked till a couple years ago. I had to get these dumb things, okay? Because that's an example of second law of thermodynamics, by the way, decay. Now, I debated an atheist in Buckner in New York. He said the eye is poorly designed, like I believe I just heard a few moments ago. It's a poor design. He said the retina is in front, the blood vessels are in front of the retina, so they block part of the light coming in. He said the octopus has a much better eye because their blood vessels are behind the retina. That's proof of evolution because of poor design. I said, Ed, we live in the air, okay? Air is a poor insulator for UV light. Your body needs the blood vessels in front of the retina because that's your last defense against UV light. Octopus live in the water, okay? Water blocks UV light. They don't need their blood vessels in front. Now, if you want to swap eyes with an octopus, you just go ahead and enjoy yourself, but you're going to be blind in a few days, okay? Their argument from poor design is like saying, well, God wouldn't do it this way, therefore it must have evolved. That's a lousy argument for evolution. That's a proof evidence, that's an evidence to me that we were originally perfectly designed, and all of humanity is just plain falling apart, folks. And yes, God's going to have to step in here pretty soon, and we're going to all kill ourselves. Okay? Thank you so much.
Professors Reisbig, Schleifer, and Strayer, in the interest of time, seeing that we have left time for a 10-minute closing statement for each side, let's go ahead and present those now. Would you please go ahead? Thank you.
Okay, this is my closing, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, this has been an interesting discussion that we've had. I wonder how we have all changed in our minds and thinking and knowledge of what we have talked about. We've talked about some good information. I've heard some bad information. I happen to believe in the scientific method.
And what I want to say to conclude here, at the beginning, Dr. Hovind offered a general ethical principle, and that is that we have an inheritance of sin. I find that abhorrent. I find that absolutely incredible to even believe that. Anybody who has seen a baby and is holding it in your arms, would you really believe that that is hellbound, that that has inherited sin? It's a most objectionable concept that is being carried around here in the name of religion. And for that reason, I also believe that we really do have a very clear-cut science, because evolution is self-correcting. It is accumulating data, that it's checking each other. It has the open scientific community exchanging ideas with each other, checking on each other, and not some kind of an authoritative system that is loaded down on us where we have no possibility of questioning. The one is democracy, the scientific community. The other is a form of authoritarianism that I find very objectionable.
I'd like to quote from this creationist book for my closing. There's a section in here, 342, it says, scientific truths revealed in the Bible. Many important scientific truths were revealed in the Bible thousands of years before they were discovered by modern scientists. And then it lists several of them. One of them has to do with the Earth rotating on its axis, and that's, this 6-day thing. Another one has to do with the Earth running down, the second law of thermodynamics. And there's some stuff about blood and water and that kind of stuff. But anyway, here is the proof from the Bible that the Earth rotates on its axis. It tells these students to check Luke 17:31 through 34. In that day, he which shall be upon the housetop, and his stuff in the house, let him not come down and take it away. And he that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. Remember Lot's wife. Whosoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it, and whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. I tell you, in the night there shall be 2 men in one bed, and one shall be taken, and the other shall be left. I did not understand that. I called Becca. I said, what does that mean? Well, you check with the teacher's manual to find out what that means. And They went right, and they came back, they said, we're sorry, that's not mentioned in the teacher's manual. I said, well, you know, is it a possibility, is a misprint? They took that as an insult and said, no, it's not a possibility, and click, they hung up. The second one, the universe is running down. To find out the proof from the Bible that the universe is running down, you go to Isaiah 51:6, and it says, lift up your eyes to the heavens and look upon the earth beneath, for the heavens shall vanish away like smoke, and the earth shall wax old like a garment, and they that dwell within shall die in like manner. But my salvation shall be forever, and my righteousness shall not be abolished. I didn't understand that either. I hope the applause means that you understood that that has something to do with the second law of thermodynamics and not... Anyway.
It might.
Anyway, I decided to take a quote from one of the best-known creationists in the country, explaining to me, or to all of us, why all these colleges all over the world do not accept creationism. And here's the quote. It's from a fellow named Kent Hovind, and it came, the source is, I got it from the internet, The Unmasking the False Religion of Evolution. Here's his quote. There is definitely a conspiracy, but I don't think it's a human conspiracy. I don't believe that there's smoke-filled rooms where groups of men get together and decide to teach evolution in all the schools. I believe it's a much higher level. I believe it is a satanic conspiracy. The reason these different people come to the same conclusions is not because they all met together, it's because they all work for the devil. I think that was one of the most arrogant statements I've ever read in my life. And if we're going to use the Bible for science, we've got some tough things to explain. What about the cockatrice? It's mentioned 4 times in the Bible. It's a chicken, a rooster, that lays poison eggs, that can fly and spits fire. What are we going to do about dragons being mentioned 17 times in the Bible? What are you going to do about unicorns, are mentioned 8 times in the Bible? I want to tell you what, we have never found a fossil of a unicorn. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we did? Then you people would have something to applaud for. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, first, I need to say, fellas, I thank you so much for doing this. These students get about 9 months out of the year teaching on evolution. It's about time they get a couple hours at least to hear a conflict between creation and evolution, and I will be glad to come back at my expense anytime. Now, people say, oh, creationists win the debates because they have, you know, better visuals. Okay, I don't use any tax dollars to buy my visuals. You guys got unlimited funding to buy stuff. Here, get some better visuals. Don't blame me. People say, well, creationists win because they have a dumb audience. People are dumb if they believe in creation. That's the implication over and over. People believe because we need more money to teach evolution. That's why it's a lack of funding. That's why we're losing these debates. No, maybe you're losing the debates because you're wrong. And I'm right, okay? Several points were brought up, and I'll use a few of my minutes for this, and then I want to give a quick closing here. I'm in favor of the scientific method. You develop a theory, you gather facts to support your theory. If you can't find any facts, you throw the theory away. Evolution would have been thrown away a long time ago, except they don't have a replacement theory, other than maybe somebody designed it. Oh, they don't want that one. He mentioned he doesn't believe about inherent sin. Well, I happen to have had 3 kids and 2 grandkids, 1 more due any day. We didn't teach any of them to lie or cheat or steal, but they all just kind of did it automatically. How many of you notice the same thing with your kids when you're raising them, okay? Yes, I think it's quite obvious to anybody that's raised any kids, there is an inherent sin nature. If you think man is inherently good, you're living in la-la land, okay? Man is inherently bad, okay? And he needs a savior. He said, you don't want an authoritative system. That's very objectionable to you. That is my entire point. The reason people reject the creation story is because they don't want somebody telling them what to do. The Bible says in the last days scoffers would come that would be willingly ignorant of the creation and the flood. 2 Peter chapter 3, read it for yourself. They're willingly ignorant of the creation because that creation event tells us God created this place, which means he owns it, which means he makes the rules. They don't want to admit there was a flood because that flood indicates God has the authority to judge his creation. They just don't want to admit that. I cover this very thoroughly, by the way, on Seminar Part 2. You might want to watch that one. And they're right there out there. And by the way, my stuff's not copyrighted. You can get it, copy it, send back the originals, and get your money back. That's always been our policy. So yes, I can understand why the idea of an authoritarian Bible is objectionable to some people, because that Bible says thou shalt not do, quite a few things, okay? So, yeah, I understand. The Bible says the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. I think the evidence for a designer is so obvious all around us. If you're walking through the woods and you find a painting hanging on the tree and you see no footprints, you see no people, you still conclude there was a painter. If you're walking through the woods and you find a building and you see no footprints, you see no people, you still conclude there was a builder. When you see a watch, that's proof of a watchmaker. When you see a creation, that's proof of a creator, whether you ever meet him or not. There just had to be one. Now, who is it? Is it Allah or Buddha or Jehovah? Well, that's a different set of arguments, but the fact is, there must have been a designer, whoever he was. There had to be a designer. We can argue later about which one's right, okay? But there had to be. People object to that. You said, what does Luke mean? Luke was telling them that in that day, some will be in the field and some will be in bed. That's proof the world is round. It's dark on one side. That's evidence right there. So I can explain. I don't know why Becca couldn't explain it, but that's pretty obvious to me. Now, hang on, what happened here? Okay. I visited Wayne Strickland's tombstone. I don't know if the other date's filled in yet or not. It's been a couple years since I've been there, but the date was empty when I was there. He said he's an atheist. The Bible says the fool has said in his heart there is no God. God does not believe in atheists. And I don't either, okay? You're going to die one of these days. I'm going to die. Now, fellas, I didn't drive all the way over here and leave my gorgeous wife because I like being gone, okay? I didn't come to win an argument. I came to win you over. Honestly, I would like to see you saved, going to heaven. Maybe you think you are. I don't know. But if you think God used evolution, you have the wrong God, okay? I know you write all kinds of articles for the Atheist magazine, according to your bio here, Jim, and I think that people run from God. People can't find God for the same reason a thief can't find a policeman. I sacrifice my time to travel and to do this because I'm concerned that people are actually dying and going to hell. I'm really concerned that that really happens. I believe the Bible teaches that. I believe that's literally true. I believe we were designed for a purpose. And God loves each of us. He hates our sin. The Bible says he's angry with the wicked every day. God hates our sin, but he loves us. And we are inherently sinful. And we're going to die. All of us are going to die. And you're going to be dead for a really, really long time. Okay? George Washington died 205 years ago, and he is still dead. I don't care how long you live, you're going to be dead longer than that, and you better think about that long and hard. You better be really positive you're right on this one. God made this world, he owns it, he makes the rules, and we are guilty of breaking his rules. So rather than admit we've broken his rules, people say, well, there is no God, we got it by evolution, which means, of course, there are no rules. If evolution is true, there are no rules. I asked the question at the beginning, I never got an answer. If evolution is true, how do we tell right from wrong? How do we tell right from wrong? God told us very clearly, thou shalt not bear false witness. Don't lie. We've all lied. Don't steal. We've stolen things. We broke his commandments, folks. We're guilty, period. Which means we're going to be punished, or you got to find a substitute. And that's where Jesus comes in. The God that made this world also came down and said, look, you blew it, you're all sinners, you're all going to hell. However, I still love you and I still want to forgive you. I'll even die and take your place. You can't beat a deal like that. Now, Romans chapter 1. Romans chapter 1 gives us a clear progression, and I would recommend every atheist or evolutionist or agnostic read Romans chapter 1 very carefully. Because that which may be known of God, he may be known, okay? You may know things about him. You can learn about God. That which may be known is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. You know there's a designer. Okay, I don't care about all your arguments. You know somebody made this place. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. Judgment day, you're just flat seriously in trouble. Okay? Because then when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like a corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things. They worshiped the creation. That's what evolution's all about. Save the planet. Wherefore God gave them up to uncleanness through their own lust, to dishonor their own hearts and dishonor their own bodies between them. He changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator. I mean, to them, the animals are more important. Look, I like animals. I take care of the animals we have around our place, and I think Christians take care of their things. But folks, this whole concept of nature is all there is. We got to save the planet. I don't pollute. I try hard not to. I work very hard to keep our place clean, and we do a very good job, I think. You can come visit Pensacola, Florida. But that's not the ultimate goal of life. The Bible says God gave them up. You follow this trend. They don't want God telling them what to do, so God gives up on them. Okay, you do what you want. And they get turned over to vile affections. That's the way it always goes. It descends. You can read the rest of the chapter. It goes right into homosexuality. By the way, if your job is to pass on your genes and you're the fittest, well, they're not the fittest, that's for sure. They're not passing on any genes to anybody. We could spend a long time on that one, but God's going to judge this planet. He tells us he's going to have to, because man has rejected him. Now, they professed him. They thought they were wise. They became fools. And if you believe your grandpa was a rock, you're a fool. Some of my ancestors probably swung by their necks, okay, but none of them swung by their tails. Now, if you think your grandpa was a monkey, I think you're still a fool, but that's okay. You have the right to believe that. You do not, however, have the right to use tax dollars to teach that fairy tale in a public university at taxpayer expense. I think evolution should be taught in private schools at private expense. Now, you guys are not the enemy. I love you and I want to help you, okay? I think you're deceived, and it's worse that you're deceiving others if you're teaching this stuff. Now, there are people here tonight with yellow shirts on. If you'd stand up, you're supposed to be standing up with a yellow shirt, you know who you are. These people right here are willing to talk to you and show you how you can become a Christian and go to heaven. Okay, that's why I do this. I want to convert people, get them saved. That's why I'm here, okay? I think the scientific evidence is on our side. I think I'm right. I think I won the debate tonight, actually. But it's not because I'm smart. It's because I'm right. And God loves you. He wants to save you and forgive you. See one of these folks afterwards. We'll be glad to help any way we can. Thank you so much.